And now, without further delay, let's begin today's event, sponsored by Varo Bank and Mitek and hosted by American Banker. I'd like to introduce your moderator, and that is Mike Perkowski. Mike, you have the floor.
Well, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's webinar. We're glad that you could join us for our program entitled How and When to Use ID Document Verification and Biometrics. Before we go any further, I do want to take a moment to again acknowledge and thank Mitek and Varo Bank for their sponsorship of today's program. We really appreciate their support. Today we're fortunate to have two expert speakers who are going to share some of their insights and perspectives in their presentation today, as well as answer some of your questions in the Q&A part of our program. Marianne Miller is Head of Fraud Strategy at Varo Bank. Marianne has been pioneering the use of artificial intelligence and machine learning in financial services for more than 25 years. She is currently the Head of Fraud Strategy at Varo, which combines mobile technology with a social mission to provide access to no-cost premium bank accounts and automated savings tools. Prior to joining Varo, Marianne was a Senior Director and Fraud Executive at NICE Actimize and has held directorships and executive roles in fraud strategy at USAA, eBay/PayPal, and Lloyd's Banking Group. We're also going to hear from Mike Sasaki, Head of Customer Success at Mitek Systems. In leading the global customer success organization at Mitek, Mike partners with existing customers to achieve their business objectives through the optimal use of Mitek products. Mitek's global customer success team drives long-lasting relationships and evangelizes the customer perspective within Mitek. With more than a decade of experience in SaaS and customer success, Mike has worked with some of the largest brands around the globe, including top banking companies. We're fortunate to have both Mike and Marianne with us today. Before we get started, let's have the first of those polling questions that you heard or referred to. We just want to know your answer to the following question. Please let us know, where are you on your identity verification journey? And by you, I'm sure we mean your organization. So, have you just started and you're wanting to learn more best practices? Have you implemented identity verification and are looking to improve? Have you implemented identity verification and things are great? Or have you implemented ID verification but you're looking for a new partner? So please tell us which of those four choices best aligns with where your organization is today on your identity verification journey. Just getting started, want to learn more, implemented but looking to improve, implemented and things are great, or implemented but looking for a new partner. All right, in just a few seconds, we probably will have had everybody given an opportunity to vote. Please click on the radio button, hit submit, and let's share the results with all of you now, see what that looks like. All right, so the top answers, nearly half of you, 46%, say that you're just started and you want to learn more best practices, and almost 41% say that you've implemented identity verification and you're looking to improve. So that's great. We have an idea of sort of where you are in the mix right now. So let's get started. I'm going to turn the program over to our first presenter, and that's Mike Sasaki. Mike, the floor is now yours.
Great. Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I know it's bright and early for the West Coast. Appreciate you being here with us this morning. So I'm going to start off with a question that I often ask myself, and I hear others ask as well, probably the reason you're all here this morning. Who are you going to call? So with over 25 years fighting fraud, both domestically and internationally, Marianne is naturally the person you would call to get expert guidance on anything related to fighting fraud. But what sets her apart from other fraud experts is she puts the end customer and their experience at the center of her fraud fighting best practices. So who are you going to call to fight fraud while providing the best customer experience? Naturally, it's Marianne Miller. Marianne, very happy to be with you this morning. I know there's a lot going on at Varo Bank these days. Can you please bring us up to speed?
Mike, I'm really happy to be here today, and thank you for inviting me to be part of this webinar. We're really excited at Varo, and just to give you a little background for those in the audience who aren't familiar with Varo, our CEO and founder, Colin Walsh, started Varo really out of the belief that we could use technology to create a bank that was going to make really an impact on millions of people's lives. Our mission at Varo is to bring true financial innovation to Americans who need a better and more modern way to bank. And I feel just so privileged to be part of that journey.
Great, thank you, Marianne. And a little bit about Mitek. So Mitek is a publicly traded company headquartered in San Diego, with offices in Amsterdam, Barcelona, London, New York, Paris, and St. Petersburg. And if you've ever deposited a check with your phone, which I think most of us on the line or at the in the webinar today have, you've seen the Mitek experience as a customer. We've leveraged that same technology and learnings around user experience to create the leading digital identity verification solution. Additionally, we understand how important it is to pair an IDV solution with a customer-facing team that is a trusted partner to our customers. And that's the organization that I run. We understand that the trusted partner label has been earned because of our focus on bringing in domain experts in addition to being product experts. And lastly, Mitek is SOC 2 certified, which I know is a level of certification that doesn't come easy and is very meaningful to us and to our customers and most likely the attendees that are with us today. So Marianne, why don't you walk us through, I think these quotes really represent your philosophy on fighting fraud.
Yeah, Mike, and you know from working with me at Varo that customer experience is really, and I really truly mean this, at the heart of and the core of fraud strategy. I really believe that customer experience starts with the very first interaction, and if we don't get that right, we may never really get a chance to fully engage with our customers. So at Varo, we promise, happy, human, and helpful customer experience. And if that very first interaction, we don't get it right, and I like to think of it as I like my customer to have love at first sight. and if we get that experience right, then really customers really love to be part of the platform and part of the bank. So every experience and every moment really, really matters.
Yeah, and I think you don't know this, but a lot of the way I think about it has been shaped by our discussions and watching what Varo Bank has done. And not only every moment matters, but every second matters. And so now, 2020, my belief is that more assurance with less friction creates a superior customer experience, and that is achievable, right? And it's very similar to what Apple did with Touch ID, where it's more secure than a password, but it's also less friction. And the less friction piece is what everyone loves. The consumers love that. And so when I think of identity verification, I think of that as kind of a comparison of what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, I agree with you, Mike. That's a really good comparison. I feel if it's natural in the flow, then it's definitely something that customers really love. So let's talk about data breaches and why document identity verification. And I think that data breaches, it's probably a well-discussed topic, maybe overly discussed, but I wanted to bring it up one more time. I think it's really important. And when I think about data breaches, I often think about the Target data breach that was really what I consider a watershed moment in the U.S. It really brought EMV chip cards to the market because it really woke up consumers to the issues of identity. But data breach prevalence really has affected all processes. It's especially true for digital interactions of all kinds, and this really goes across, I really feel like, more than just financial services. It goes across all kinds of interactions. And if you really want to use that example, recent watershed moments are very prevalent again with COVID-19, with the PPP fraud and unemployment fraud, and it's all fueled by data for sale. I think I heard recently the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners estimated with the PPP and unemployment fraud that 10% fraud rate, and we look at the amount of money that was lended out or actually applied for, that's a mountain of money. So that's a lot of fraud. I think that also, Mike, we need to look at really what is that impact to consumers, and it's really real. I imagine that among the audience that's here today that more than one of us has been a victim of identity fraud. Someone's used our identity to apply for a loan or a product or use our identity in some way. But I'm a strong believer, really, if you look at these numbers, they're just, outstanding and, kind of scary. But I'm a strong believer that technology really exists to solve these issues. And within the last 5 years, I think identity solutions have really blossomed, and I think we're really at the stage where we can actually create that good customer experience and have strength of security as well.
Yeah, this slide really brings it home. I think when you look at, breached records in the billions, while that's a lot, when you kind of think about it this way, it really hits home and it becomes more personal and closer to, what you could experience as a consumer.
That's right, Mike. I believe.
Right. So now let's talk a little bit about your. Oops, sorry, Marianne. I was going to say, let's talk a little bit about how you balance fraud and customer experience.
Yeah, it's for those who are fraud leaders and managers on this call. This is our daily battle, is battling that teeter-totter of trust and really looking at the balance of fraud and customer experience. And I often get asked, I'm sure you as fraud leaders often get asked, how do I have the strength of security and a good customer experience? And really it's a trade-off. And I really prefer not to avoid setting them up in comparison. There's really too much talk about frictionless and security being a trade-off. And I think it's my job as a fraud leader to find innovative ways to make security disappear and make it easy and enjoyable for the customer experience. And again, I think we're finally here as an industry to make these important objectives work together.
Great, thank you, Marianne.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
Marianne,
Varo,
you shared with us some of the questions you and your team consider when you're growing digital channels. Could you share a little bit more about the strategy? Before you even get to the technology, I think it's important, and you've taught us this, that you got to know what your strategy is. What are you trying to accomplish? So maybe you can share a bit about that.
Yeah, there's lots of questions to ask. If you think about identity and authentication, it's really upfront and it's really integrated into the customer experience. So it's really important to ask, what are the kinds of objectives that you're trying to reach? And some of the questions we asked ourselves at Varo was, how much insurance do we need? What are the technology options that are available that we can leverage? And most important is, what is our users' expectations? And I really think about two key principles when I'm really looking at identity and authentication tools and solutions. Is one thing is that I think security should be natural, so that's an important part of what I think is important. And number two, I think security should be as invisible as possible. We're at the point where a lot of the signals in the background can provide the kind of smarts that we need to really establish identity and establish authentication. So, I really think that that's really important when you think about your strategy. And I think when you're looking at using ID documentation and verification, I think stepping into it from the standpoint of taking that first step is important, and taking the first step from say, a test and learn perspective is really important as well.
Yeah, those are great points, Marianne. One thing that I've learned from working with our customers is that you have to look at the use case as well, right? What is the risk for that specific use case? When we were working with Airbnb, they first tried to put identity verification during onboarding, and then they realized the risk of a customer signing up for an account is pretty low, and the motivation to complete that process is pretty low as well. But once they are ready to book and they can picture themselves on the beach, the motivation's high. And so if you present them with document identity verification at that point, it's just one more step until they're on the beach mentally, right? And so they did, to your point, they did a lot of A/B testing, and that's where they realized that the use case matters, and that's where they ended up putting identity verification. So maybe you could talk a little bit about, why use case matters and how you think about that.
Yeah, and maybe we can move to the next slide, because I think that really points out where we started our journey. And we really started to look at where did we want to, like to your point, Mike, with the example of Airbnb, we thought, let's look at how we could bring business value and ID strength of security together. And we looked at our onboarding flow, and we looked at some of the opportunities we had in our referral queue to really, have customers who really wanted to be, part of Varo. They really wanted to be part of our experience, but were unable to because for some reason they weren't able to get past our traditional tools. So we thought a way for them to cure out was actually to present their driver's license front and back and to take a selfie, and that helped establish identity for us. And that was really where we decided to start our journey. So we've had a very successful journey in establishing, placing Mitek during our referral process. So for those customers who do not auto-approve, they have the opportunity to actually present their identity.
Yeah, that's great. And it's so important to contextualize the identity verification ask and keep the end customer educated on the why. So why are you asking me for a selfie? And why are you asking me to blink? And the best practice would be to proactively message to the customer, we're asking you to take a selfie and to blink because we see fraud attempts where the selfie is doctored. So we're asking you to do this so that we can keep you safe and keep our platform safe. And what we see is, as long as you're explaining the why and communicating to the customer along the way, they're okay with it because it seems like less of a lift, right? And there's value that they're getting. There's a benefit that they're getting in turn.
That's right. That's right. And we have found that to be very successful. And I think that customers, again, if it's intuitive and it's easy in the app, then they really respond well.
And how much time would you say, working with customers, I do see that the messaging is often overlooked, and how much time do you spend at Varo Bank talking about messaging and putting yourself in the customer's shoes and understanding what they're feeling? And maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Oh, we spend a lot of time doing that. In fact, we speak to customers and get their opinions on things. We do focus groups and really try to understand from the customer directly, how do you want this experience to be? How do you think most customers would like this experience to be? And that's a very important part of our whole design aspect and approach, is to really listen to the customer. And it's just not us, with our product teams or engineering teams thinking through these experiences. We actually include our customers in those decisions.
Oh, that's really interesting. That must be you do see the results of that in the experience itself, right? Is that something that you had to fight for? Is that culturally just part of the DNA of Varo Bank?
Oh, no, we didn't have to fight. I'm, going against an open door. It's definitely our culture at Varo Bank, and we talk about the customer, all day, and it's really an important part of our DNA and our culture.
Yeah, that's great to hear. It's encouraging. As far as looking into the future, walk us through some of the future uses for IDV that you see both at Varo Bank and just in general.
Yeah, if you think about it, we really tried to think about it from the standpoint of it. it really wasn't that many years ago when most of us would not even think twice about taking a picture of a check and depositing it. And I really think that ID verification is really moving to that same kind of standard. And we see some areas where there's opportunities to have customers present their identity through an ID documentation and verification that really where we can offer quicker customer experience. And some of those areas are in fraud resolution when a customer or someone's we're needing to actually establish identity before we maybe take a closed account to an open status, or there's maybe high value transactions when a customer wants to move a higher limit, or password reset. So some of these kind of sensitive areas where ID documentation could come into the mix in a very nice way. Other kinds of things that, if you think about different kinds of products like lending, where ID verification can really speed up the approval flow, where it's really important that if a customer is going for they want a personal loan, or if they want an auto loan, or that, maybe even in the mortgage process. So I think that if in the age of COVID, when we're moving into the area of digital, that it's really, and customers like digital, where we can move to, or where more processes can become stronger with our need to have identity established.
I just wrote that down. That's so true, that customers like digital. It's something that we often forget, and we're all customers as well. Just to put some names to some of these forward-looking use cases. So PayPal is a great example of a customer of ours that leverages document ID verification for certain high-value transactions. We're also seeing document ID verification start to replace KBA, right? We know KBA is fraught with so many challenges, both with fraud and lack of conversion. And the last thing that we're seeing, it's really interesting because you won't get to, you pointed this out, that frictionless is probably the wrong word, but you can make it feel that way, right? And with the technology that's available nowadays, you can get to a point where you can verify the identity of every user that comes through for certain use cases. A great example of this is Instacart. They use document identity verification and face comparison with a selfie for every shopper that comes through, and they do it in such a great way that it does not feel like a huge inconvenience, or any inconvenience really, for the end user. So those are some of the forward-looking use cases that I'm seeing in the industry.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we're ready for a poll. Mike?
Great, thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is our second polling question. If you would please let us know your answer to the following, and the idea here is we want to know which one use case is your top use case for identity verification. We understand you may be using it for multiple use cases, but please select the one that is your top one. Onboarding, P2P money transfer, risky applicants only, fraud resolution, high-value transactions, other, something else. Which one is your top use case for identity verification? Onboarding, P2P money transfer, risky applicants only, fraud resolution, high-value transactions, or other? As we did on our last poll, we're going to take a few seconds to make sure that you have an opportunity to give us your answer to this. Click on the radio button of your choice, hit submit, and in just a moment we will share the results with you and continue with the rest of our presentation. All right, let's see what the results look like. All right, great. Overwhelmingly, number one answer, almost 64% of you say onboarding is your top use case for identity verification. Everything else is in the single digits. The top one of the remaining ones is fraud resolution. Okay, Mike or Marianne, anything surprising and so overwhelmingly focused on onboarding?
Not to me.
No, I would.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, it does, Mike. It really does. And I think, that's, obviously, I think the biggest challenge right now in the industry, and I think that's a good place to start, and I'm not surprised.
Yeah, and this really speaks to everything that you've been saying, Marianne, and the customer experience and the first impression, and that leads us right into our next topic here. And one of my favorite quotes from our Identity Innovator shoot that we did in San Francisco, which seems like years ago, customers don't mind security when it's natural and easy. Can you tell us a bit about that philosophy and how it plays into your approach of IDV UX at Varo Bank?
Yeah, Mike, that was really important as, going back to, working, getting customer feedback on the design, working with our internal teams with the design. And customers really react when you guide them. Customers really need to know what to do next. They need a guided flow that's intuitive. It needs to be clear. I like nice design. Varo, we love nice design. It's really important to us. And even make your customers smile in the process. So if you're in the middle of the flow and you're guiding the user, and the user is looking and going, oh, this is easy. Oh, this is even fun. That's really important. And that's what we try to do, is to create an experience that really put a smile on our customer's face.
Yeah, and I think from the IDV solution standpoint, we know that capturing a high quality image at the beginning of the onboarding process is really the key to both fraud prevention and converting that customer, right? Converting that good customer. A majority of your customers are good, and you need to give them that great experience. That's why we offer MySnap. That's our document capture SDK, which really provides that great experience and a high quality image. And without that, it's really hard to achieve everything that you've talked about to this point.
Yeah, that's true. That goes back to the guided flow. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the selfie and how you use it, how you message it, why it's powerful, and how you leverage it.
Yes. So the selfie is an important part of the comparison. We use that with Mitek's AI and ML to really connect the ID with the actual person that's presenting the ID, so that's a stronger part of the identity process. I do know that this was one that we really need to work with our customers. Sometimes customers, they look at themselves. You're in the middle of the day and you're applying for an account. Maybe you don't, think you look the best. So you're taking your selfie and you're going, oh. So sometimes we'll see a pause in that. But customers, most people are used to taking selfies. There's so many people that love to take selfies, so they don't find this as something kind of unusual. So that's something that we found it was an important part of the process. I think that not every use case you need to use a selfie. There's sometimes when just looking at the driver's license front and back would be enough. But the selfie does bring another level of strength of security in the process, especially for examples like onboarding.
And the capture experience is really important, right? And being able to customize it. And maybe you could speak to that, because what I see here consistently is the Varo Bank colors, right? Brand. And so, it's really important, right? And I don't know if everyone understands why it's important, how it's important, and how you think about that.
Yes. So again, going back to some of our culture at Varo and our key, design is really very, very important to us at Varo. We have one of the most outstanding design experts, August De La Reyes, on part of our team. And August is involved in, really part of our whole Varo design. And that design is not just so that the design works because it's attractive. That design works because it works for our customers, because it's something that intuitive to our customers or helps our customers engage with us in a better way. So it's a very important part. So the fact that Mitek had the actual capabilities for us to customize that design was a very important part of our decision.
Great. And this next slide, this is my favorite slide. It's so simple, and it's probably 5 seconds of the customer's experience, but it really speaks to what Varo Bank believes, what you believe. So let me explain what this is. This is the customer engagement part of when you're waiting for your document to be verified. There are these facts that come up that are really interesting and fun. Most importantly, they're fun. And so it's really impressive that Varo Bank and you have taken the time, and this 5 seconds matters to you. So maybe you can walk us through how you arrived at this. Hey, we need to put something here while the customer is waiting for their document to be verified.
Yes, we didn't want our customers to think, 5 seconds, when you're in the flow and you're engaging with your bank, it can be a long time. So you're looking and you're thinking, we don't want our customers to think that we've hung up, so to speak. So we keep so while the document and the ID is processing, and we'd like to just keep our customers engaged and having fun with us, and so that way that 5 second goes past really fast. And we found that customers really love this part of the flow. Great.
Yeah, this is really impressive and speaks to how Varo Bank views customer centricity, right? I've only seen one other customer do something similar, and that's Instacart. They present a game to play while you're waiting for your document to be verified. So really great job there. Okay, so this is a great slide. I'll hand this over to you, Marianne.
Yeah, so, nothing infuriates me more than fraud actors harming consumers or customers and, trying to take advantage of them, certainly in the onboarding flow. And, identity theft is really something that, I'm really keyed in on. And so, there are some situations in the flow where, customers don't have access to an ID. Or you're not clear about what IDs you accept. So it's really important back to communicating with your customers so that they know what acceptable forms of ID that you accept. But we also have real examples of fraud. And we have, fraudsters that are trying to submit, fake documents or doctored documents. And that's what's great about the product as well. And we focused up till now on the customer experience, but really there's a really strong ability to detect that fraud, and certainly that MI and ML gives us the results to know when there is a document that's not legitimate, or someone who's maybe presenting an ID that might be legitimate, a stolen ID, but the selfie doesn't match. So there's really an important part of the process is really, stopping that fraud from occurring and stopping those bad actors.
So it's always interesting when we talk about, what you've put together, right, the finished product, but there's also an understanding and realization that there's a process that you have to go through, right? And there's some key learnings along the way, and I always think that's helpful for the audience to hear from someone like you. So maybe you could share with us some of the key learnings and the dynamics that you've encountered.
Yeah, so there's always lessons learned when you put in any kind of a technology, and there's always tweaks that you want to make and improvements that you want to make. So if we see, we have biometrics today, but in the future we're looking at deep fakes, that can occur. Those are definitely something that's a big discussion in the market. Document templates are constantly changing, so real IDs needing to be updated state by state, or the under 21 IDs that are being updated state by state, and we work really closely with Mitek to talk about where our focus markets are, and Mitek does a great job of working with us around updating those documents, but it's really important to communicate and work with your vendor to make sure that, you know, the documents in the areas where your customers are, that those are up to date and included, you know, in any evaluation. You know, as we innovate, fraudsters innovate faster, and we know that. They are getting really good with fake documents. That's something that working with your document ID vendor is important to make sure that they're capturing any of that innovation on the fraudster side. And again, partnering with enterprise class vendors is important, and tailored solutions. You know, vendors that have the experience. And, you know, we went through a long RFP, RFI process to really come down to our solution. And user expectations change. You know, customers want to control their PII. We have privacy laws that are coming into play. So it's really important to really look at, you know, what is the user expectation, and we need to adjust to that expectation of our customers as time goes on.
Yeah, I second all of this. I think one of the biggest challenges or areas for alignment when working with a new customer is that first point, that it's hard to have 100% assurance. And so there's some identity education that goes on during the onboarding process. But now starting to think about, you know, technology for more secure identity verification in the future. What does the roadmap look like? And, you know, document coverage is seemingly simple to stay on top of, but the reality is, as you mentioned, that documents churn at a high rate. And, you know, our job is to stay on top of it. Mitek's job is to stay on top of it. And this is a huge priority because that is the basics of getting the good customers through and also catching fraud, right? And biometrics, you know, there's been a lot of talk of biometrics, and that leads to more assurance. However, you know, there's this, for the audience today, you know, we took the poll, and onboarding, that was the number one use case, which wasn't surprising, overwhelmingly number one. And you want to reduce the amount of friction that you have. So yes, biometrics leads to more assurance, but it cannot come with a significant amount of additional friction. And with the onboarding use case, it's most likely going to be through mobile web and not through a native app. So having a great mobile web experience is going to be really important. And the options of having a biometrics tied to it with selfies, face comparison, and most importantly, liveness connected to it as well. That's going to be really important. So that's something that I would look out for. And as mentioned before, it's really important to continue to innovate when it comes to authentication techniques. And at Mitek, you know, we add authentication techniques, of course, but we also consider, you know, how much friction does this add? So any authentication technique that we're going to add to our product, we have to know that it's not going to lead to a significant amount of friction as well, because onboarding is most likely the number one use case that we are targeting as well. And then as far as IDV and the new normal, we work with a lot of different customers, including banks, the top banks, but we also work with other industries. With listing properties, we work with Open Door, onboarding shoppers, I already mentioned Instacart, rideshare, there's Hire a Car, and a ton of customers when it comes to account opening. And the nice thing about account opening is that there's most likely a form that you have to fill out. And so if you can capture the document as part of this form fill, this auto form fill, then it doesn't feel like you're asking, you know, for a document for verification. You're actually asking for a document for this pre-fill of a form, which is a huge benefit to customers, right? So it's about turning that friction into something that is beneficial for the end user. And then, of course, online and app-based money transfers. I already talked about PayPal, but the message here is that there's a lot of benefit to having this wide range of customers in different industries, because you can capitalize and you can really take the best practices from each industry and share them across industries. I have customers asking me all the time, you know, what are your other customers doing? What are your other customers doing outside of banking, right? What can we learn from them? And so it's super helpful, and getting the community together, building up the community is a high priority for us, because that's when we're able to share these best practices. And then this is from Gartner, and this may be surprising, but it's also nice to see that by 2022, 80% of organizations will be using document-centric identity proofing as part of the onboarding workflows, which is an increase from approximately 30% today. It's nice to see, because Marianne, you're well ahead of the curve here. Maybe you can share your thoughts on this. Is this a surprising number to you?
No, not at all. And, we're really proud at Varo that we're part of the leaders in this particular, we're part of the 30% today, but it's not surprising at all. I think that it's really, we're at a point, again, going back to the conversation around data breaches, where more innovative ways to establish identity and the topic of identity is more and more important in the industry. And the easy way to present a document within the flow and through a process like document ID verification is definitely something that is a very good way to start to solve that problem and work with your customers on a good experience as well.
And we did touch on this, but I think it's important to really hammer this message home. Can you walk us through the customer experience that we see on this slide here?
Yeah, so far so good. And what we have is we're really having a superior customer experience, and we have found that that this allows our customers to obtain the Varo account that they want to obtain and the experiences they want to obtain, and it makes the seamless experience easy and seamless. So we again really the kind of goal that we started out with our 25% that go into the referral queue on the average, and to be able to have those customers who are wanting to establish their Varo account quickly and easily, we found that this process really complemented our whole onboarding experience.
Great, and we'll finish with some quotes here. If it wasn't clear throughout this presentation, the customer experience is everything. This means minimizing fraud in order to keep a platform safe, but also getting good customers verified quickly and with the best customer experience. For the latter, the key is communication and contextualization of the why you are asking the user for ID verification. Marianne, please close us out with your final words.
Well, thanks, Mike. It's been really, enjoyable and nice to be able to share this time with you and with Mitek, and talking about actually one of my favorite topics, which is identity. And I just want to express to the audience that I think that as an industry, it's important for us to address this topic. And I think that there are solutions and there are ways that we can actually combat fraud and establish identity and really work for the greater good. And thank you very much.
All right, Mike, we'll kick it back to you.
Okay, great. So let's go to our Q&A part of the program. We do have a number of questions from audience members here that we want to get to. So let's get started. Okay, Mike, probably this first one I think would be for you. Does this solution work on a PC or non-mobile device?
Yes, by the solution, I'm assuming that means they mean the Mitek or document verification. Absolutely, yeah. So a mobile device, you would have the option of 3 channels, really. Well, 2 channels, native plus mobile web. And then desktop, you can start the journey, the onboarding journey on the desktop, and you can pass it over to the mobile phone for the document capture and selfie and anything else that you need to do, and then it connects back to desktop. So it's a really nice experience.
I find it funny that somebody like myself, who's been in the computer industry for many, many years, when we were mostly in the stationary and endpoint model, that people are still wanting to be able to use them as much as dinosaurs as they may seem like in some cases. Okay, let's go to our next question. Our audience member wants to know, do you think that a portable identity solution is a possibility? A service where individuals and business can verify with one party and then assert their identity across institutions?
That's an interesting one. That sounds like self-sovereign identity, if I'm reading that correctly. I don't know if you have any thoughts on thoughts on that, Marianne. I'm happy to take that, but feel free.
Yeah. There are some countries that have progressed in this area, globally, with some different protocols and different approaches to more of, to your point, Mike, a sovereign ID. I don't think in the U.S. market. I know there's been probably some frustration, even at multiple industry level, that there isn't a way. The Social Security number has long since gone away as being the end-all proof for that, and so I think that conversation will continue. I think that it's going to probably be a joint effort between financial institutions and businesses and the government even to get to that point. But I'm looking forward to that, but I think I think we're a few years away from that.
Yeah, we were talking with an identity innovator, Vinny Lingham, who founded Civic, and I think it seems like we are heading in that direction. Adoption is one of the bigger challenges. So you can have these apps or these self-sovereign identity companies, but you have to have a place to use them, right? And so that seems to be one of the bigger challenges with that.
Okay, let's move on to our next question. Mike, I think this one will probably be for you, again, regarding Mitek solution. Do you support document verification outside of the U.S.?
Yes, we have global coverage, and that's one of our strengths. I should have mentioned that in the presentation. But yeah, we have global document coverage.
Okay, let's move to our next one. Marianne, probably good for you to start with, and Mike will probably be able to join in. Our audience member wants to know, what is your fallback when a user doesn't have a form of identity that is accepted by Varo or Mitek?
So really, if they don't have what we call acceptable ID, and Mitek covers driver's license, they cover passports and state IDs. We do accept some IDs that are not in the Mitek flow, but what we do is we do physical review of those documents. But if you don't have an acceptable ID in our acceptable ID list, then it's you can't open a Varo account.
Yeah, I would say that's probably in the small minority, but often our customers will use their own agents or their own reps to verify identity through other means. And sometimes it's a document that we don't accept, and we don't consider a valid proof of identity, right? But it's very rare that happens. But we do work with our customers to figure out a solution and a nice fallback that creates that same great experience for the customer.
Great. Let's go to our next question. Our audience member wants to know, do you do risk-based IDV? So riskier customers would need to do additional verification.
Yeah, and that's actually what we do in our onboarding flow today. So the referred population in the onboarding flow are customers that are higher risk or just higher risk because there's information that we need to be able to complete that application. So I think that risk-based approach to ID capture can be is a good way to start.
Yeah, I see this a lot. There are a lot of different risk signals. I think that's what this question is getting at. And I started at Mitek 3+ years ago, and the amount of work that we do with customers now has moved from our own product to the end-to-end onboarding workflow, right? So we're in there with our customers looking at the whole workflow, even outside of where Mitek sits, and that's really important. And so we're able to share these best practices that we learn from our different customers in order to really help them with their onboarding, with our customers' onboarding workflow that extends beyond just the Mitek piece. So the short answer is yes, we do see risk-based IDV, based on rules and things like that. You can have step-ups to document or whatever the case is, right? You usually see a lot of different risk signals in an onboarding flow.
Great. Let's go to our next question. Mike, probably start with you for this one. How do you recommend businesses evaluate the success of identity verification?
That's a good question. I mean, I would turn that back to the customer and help them through that, understanding what is success for them. And it really goes back to the use case and what they're trying to achieve. If it's an onboarding use case and there's, maybe it's DDA where there's less risk, then maybe the success criteria there is really getting customers, right? Getting these prospects to open up an account. If it's a loan, that's the use case, then the risk is definitely different. But really centering around what is the use case, what are we trying to do as a business, right? I like to use the term desired business outcomes and not desired Mitek product outcomes. Those are two different things, and they have to be in line, but they can't be fighting against each other, right? So I don't know if that answers the question, but that kind of just gives some light into how I think about it with our customers. Marianne, maybe you have something to add there?
Yeah, Mike, and I like your perspective on the desired business outcomes because, as fraud practitioners, we can think about, oh, yeah, we need to stop the fraud. That's, certainly important. But really, a desired business outcome is that, again, using the onboarding flow as an example, we really want good consumers who want to, engage and be part of Varo to be able to do that. And that's, the desired business outcome in the end is to be able to make sure that you can verify those good customers.
Great. Let's go to our next one. This is an interesting one, so a little bit longer, so stick with me. This is a question regarding the power of a selfie. Are we tying that use to the availability of mobile? How are we handling this online channel? And what happens to omni-channel and consistency of experience?
That's a good question. I'm rereading it. I think this question gets to what do we do if there isn't a mobile phone involved? Is that right? Or is the mobile phone a dependency? Is that the question?
Not sure how to interpret that.
And Mike, I would say that there's different signals you use for identity. So I would say that document ID and verification is definitely a strong solution for identity, but there's other signals that you would want to use across an omni-channel view that would help when you're authenticating or establishing identity in, say, the IVR or the call center, or again on the web or on the mobile. So there are mobile network operator types of signals. There's other kinds of signals that you can use to complement your whole identity strategy. So it's, but I think that document ID and verification is an important part of that identity stack, if you want to think about it that way.
Yeah, and that's a great point. Now I understand. And that gets back to really understanding, I think, the end-to-end onboarding workflow and what risk signals you can use and which ones you're already using, and where you might have some weakness because of your use case or certain parts of your, I guess, those that are trying to get through the workflow, and really understanding what that customer has available to them and doesn't. So it's a tough question, but it's one that we often work with our customers on trying to solve these by really understanding who their customer is and what they're trying to achieve and what their workflow looks like and what tools they have available to them.
Great. We've got time for just one more question, and then we're going to do some closing housekeeping. This question is, what kind of document types are customers wanting to use to authenticate other than driver's licenses and passports?
Well, we see customers sometimes, they want to use sometimes gun permits, which is interesting. They'll want to use sometimes IDs that are, maybe military IDs. We see other IDs that our customers try to use. Sometimes I'm trying to think of other kinds of IDs that are important to our customers. Sometimes we see customers that want to use university IDs. So there's other IDs that, maybe you're a younger customer and you haven't established your ID or gotten your ID yet, or maybe you don't even have your driver's license and may have an alternative ID, or someone that just carries another kind of ID with them more on a regular basis. So sometimes global IDs. So sometimes these travel issued IDs like global. I'm trying to remember the program name, but those are the kinds of IDs too that are sometimes presented. So, customers like to have, choice in IDs. So we do see some other types of IDs that customers try to present.
Yeah, and it's country specific as well. So globally, we see a lot of different IDs that are outside of driver's licenses and passports. Some are supported because legally we can use it to identify an individual, and some that we can't, and some of the ones that Marianne mentioned, voting cards as well. I've seen those but globally we see a lot of different types of documents.
Okay, great. Before we close up, we have one final request for you. We would like for you to give us your answer to one final question, and don't worry, we're not going to be sharing the results here with everyone. But if you are interested in learning more about identity verification, please just click on the Yes button and hit Submit. For those of you who submitted questions in the Q&A part of our program that were not answered, we apologize we couldn't get to them, but someone from Mitek will get back to you as soon as possible after this program today. All right, fantastic. So that does conclude our program. We want to thank all of you who attended this program, and of course we especially want to thank Marianne and Mike for their role as presenters and to answer your questions on our program today. Once again, we want to thank Mitek and Varo for their sponsorship. We appreciate their support. And last and least, we want to thank all of you who did attend today. We're glad you could take a little bit of time out of your busy schedules to learn more about this topic, and we hope that you will join us for a future web seminar brought to you by American Banker and its partners. On behalf of your host, your sponsor, your presenters, thank you all for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. We hope you have a great and safe day.